Hey guys, it's Barratt with the Gimpy Camper. So today we're going to talk about our old Honda Pilot that we redid, and basically we're going to go over what happens if you have a car accident with a Raptor liner paint job. We do have a whole series on how to do this, but I thought we would go into more of the repairs. So today we're going to go over the unconventional repairs that we did, as well as kind of how we got it buttoned back up and looking pretty again. So stay with us right after this. Okay guys, so a lot of you know this already, but we have been getting a little carried away with the Raptor liner paint jobs here lately. You know, first I did a Forerunner for my daughter. I just did like the bottom, the rocker panels and the fender flares for her. Then I wanted to do my truck, but before I did my truck, I wanted something to do a full body on to practice. So I did this little Honda Pilot, this 2008 Honda Pilot we got from online auction. Actually, we got it from an insurance auction. It was Copart. So we got that car. I fixed it up. It only needed a bumper cover, a hood, a seat belt, and a driver's airbag. Got all that finished up, painted it with her business color. She goes around and she sells freeze-dried candy out of it. So she's been really happy with it because it's some free advertisement. A lot of people either really love the colors or really hate it because it is a little bright. So, you know, the bright and blue, it's just her business colors. That's all it is. So essentially what happened, and what you probably don't know, is that my daughter had just turned 16. Now she's been a pretty good driver. She went with my wife to a candy event near Chattanooga, and on the way back she went to go get the car because it was about a mile away. Went to go get the car, and on the way back she said somebody slammed on their brakes in front of her. Luckily nobody was hurt, but it did, you know, it hurt my pocketbook a little bit because of all the stuff we're getting ready to talk about, plus our insurance going up and all that stuff. You know how it is, kids. Anyway, so I will say at least she learned a lesson from it and learned how fast things can change, and that you need to leave some more following distance there. But I was kind of torn on what to do with this car because the damage was a lot worse than it was initially. So instead of just needing those few parts, number one, it needed the hood and the bumper cover all again. So I just put that on 2 months ago, right before I painted it. So that hurt because like I said, we only drove this thing for 2 months before we rented somebody with it, and essentially would have totaled it out again, but I didn't turn it in on insurance because I was going to fix it myself. But the other party did turn an insurance claim in, which is what got us in our insurance situation. Anyway, so the issue is that apparently the truck that they ran into was a Ram 1500. Now, I guess it was lifted or something, because what the whole problem was is that the bumper on our car was below the bumper on their truck. So essentially whenever that hit, it tore out the front bumper cover, the radiator, the air conditioner condenser, both fenders were messed up right around the headlights. Both of the headlights were messed up. The whole front end was trashed. Now I'm pretty handy, so I kind of went through and started disassembling things. I didn't realize it was going to be as much work, or I probably would have just started over at the salvage auction again, because we like to try to find vehicles that don't have a lot of damage to them, pretty easy to fix. But this Honda only had 108,000 miles, and some people are like, 108,000 miles? Well, if you look online and try to buy one, most of them are going to have 250, 300,000 miles. So first let's talk about the Raptor liner and how it held up in the wreck. So I will say that I was very impressed with how this product held up. Truthfully, I think it was still in like the final stages of curing, because this stuff takes weeks and weeks to like fully cure. You know, you get pretty good levels in like 48 to 72 hours. You're not supposed to get it wet. I think it's 72 hours, but it takes weeks to fully cure. So I'll say when this happened, you know, that was number one, just curiosity on my part, was that, you know, is it going to flake off? Is something going to happen? Is it really as durable as it says? And I was very impressed that it only seemed to flake off in areas where there was a pretty decent crease. So like there's one area of the hood and it had a decent crease in that, and it did flake a little bit around that. But besides that, oh, and there's one area on the plastic grill where it flaked off too. But besides that, everything looked just fine. I was very impressed that it just flaked off where there was like I say, a pretty harsh like crease in the metal, which about anything would have a hard time sticking to. All right, so the most economical way that I found to fix this thing, if we were going to fix it, was to buy a parts car. You know, I only had about $3,000 tied up in this car to start with, and so I knew this was going to be kind of a hefty jump from that. But again, if you look at it, most of them are, you know, $3,000 to $4,000 that have triple the mileage. So. And it drives great. My wife loves it, so that's kind of why we delved back and tried to put this thing back together again. But I wanted to do it as cheaply as possible. I didn't care if the body panels matched or anything like that because I was going to paint them. But the problem that I had was finding a parts car on a budget. Now, a lot of these first generation Honda Pilots, there's actually two different body styles. I think it was in 2006 they had an update on the front end. And so it looks a little more boxy. I actually like that look better. And so this is what it looked like originally. But obviously the newer something is, the more expensive it's going to be to find a parts car. Well, I couldn't find one with like rear end damage on Marketplace or anything like that because I only needed the front end. And so I got to looking and I thought, you know, they're both first generation Honda Pilots, so I wonder if those older body styles, if that front end would work. So truthfully, I went on some Facebook groups for Honda Pilots and was asking around, and it seemed to be, well, you had a few different answers. The majority are just like, you need to go back with what was there, but they also didn't understand, you know, the costs involved with that, I don't think. But then the general consensus about changing to this older front end, which we eventually did because it was cheaper, was that as long as you change the core support out and the fenders out, that it should work. And so I went in looking for a parts car here, and I was actually looking for the older one because like I say, I had looked for the newer body style, couldn't find any within my budget. And every time, even with the older ones, I just had 5 or 6 of them lined up. And as soon as I line it up, and I mean, I wouldn't say like, can I come get it next week or anything, but they'd say they'd take it and then they'd either send me back a message an hour before they replied to my message telling me where to go, that they sold it. Or I had one person, this was actually the newer body style, that said, you know, I think, because they had 1,500 on it, and I said, well, I'll give you 8. But that's about all I can do because all I need is the front body parts. And they basically said that I could have it for 8, and then they were like, after they finally responded to my message, well, we decided to keep it and fix it up so we could try to sell it for more. And just as anything else goes in life, after you have one, you see 100 of them. And basically, since I put this car back together, I've seen 3 or 4 of the newer body styles with like some rear end damage or something like that were asking like $800. But you know, it's a done deal now. Before we put the front end on, I went ahead and changed the timing belt while everything was torn apart because I wasn't sure if it had been done. And I figured that engine access isn't going to be any better, so we just went ahead and did that. Now, that being said, after I took the old one off, I think it had been changed because it looked pretty new. All right, so there were 2 parts of this project that I found the most difficult, and I think the most difficult portion was actually drilling out all the spot welds on these core supports, especially the old one because it was all bent up, so it's kind of hard to get in there in spots and get all these spot welds out. And the other difficult part was the headlights because the older version uses one headlight for both functions, and the newer body style uses 2 separate bulbs for the high beam and low beam. And so because of that, I went through with a test light and decided which circuits were like low beam and high beam, But when I wired it all together, it didn't work. Essentially, I had an issue there where the low beams and the high beams were both stuck on all the time whenever you turn the lights on. So I actually had to wire in a relay, and it's a little bit ghetto, but I put a switch on the dash. So to turn the lights on, we just do like normal, turn them on here. Now when we do high beam, it doesn't do anything now. But if we go over here, so you can see the lights on because we turn the switch on inside. This switch is off. We put this on, it's going to make it go up to high beam. So, and then off. That'll work. Bright lights on, off. The lights turn off and on with the regular switch. So with all that, I did decide also to upgrade to the LED lights because they draw less power, because I just use one relay and one wire for both of those lights. And so far all that's worked out great. It was just a big mental pain to figure out how to make it work without being mostly ghetto and just staying a little bit on the ghetto side. I will say that the radiator and the air conditioner condenser I got brand new because the parts car that I got had 300,000 miles on it, and I figured we might as well, you know, just buy some new parts there. And on Amazon they were decently affordable. I did have to go to the dealership and buy an AC line that goes to the air conditioner condenser because my line was broken and the line was different on the different cars, and so it fished its way through the body of the car to the air conditioner condenser in a different area. And because of some components that were added in the later model, that line wouldn't work. So I had to buy a new one of those, which was not cheap. I think it was as much as the radiator was. And for anybody else out there that's kind of wondering, you know, how difficult this process was, things didn't fit quite right. When you realize this car had been in a wreck at least twice, and you're going from one body style to the next. So the fenders, whenever I put the fenders on, which you do have to change the fenders if you're going to change the front because the headlights are shaped different. So when I put them on, they seem to ride higher than the hood did, about a quarter inch or so. I actually had to take like a flathead screwdriver to use as a chisel and a hammer, and basically there's these U-shaped supports that hold that fender down, and that's what you screw down to. I had to bend those, kind of flatten them out. So say that this was the top and this was the side, I had to kind of flatten them out like that. That way it would sit lower, and that lined those body lines up pretty well. The only thing that I never did get lined up for my OCD was there was like a quarter-inch gap behind both headlights. For that, I also lived on the edge a little bit here, and I just got some caulking and put in there that's black, so it kind of camouflages that gap a little bit and keeps some of that water out. And I don't know if that'll hold up or not, but I've had that on there for about 3 months and it's held up great. So I think that it'll be okay, and we'll just see. All right, so as far as the Raptor liner paint job, so this is what we did. My thought was, you know, I wasn't sure what the best way to be to blend it and everything else. Number one, I will say that the Velocitint that I used, I went back, ordered some more Velocitint, and of course, you know, you can just dump the one pouch in the 1 liter of Raptor, and the color was spot on whenever I did that. But I wanted to blend it a little bit, because even when they do cars, you know, they always kind of blend the paint a little bit whenever they're patching up a panel anyway. So what I ended up doing was I taped off the windows and everything like that. I took some Harbor Freight moving blankets and I put it over the wheels, so I didn't have to take the wheels and stuff off. Before I taped the windows off, I did go over it with some dish soap and some degreaser on those areas. And then I taped off the windows. And I also went through with my nylon cut brush, and then I went over the front panels that I was repainting with a nylon cut brush, went over it with degreaser again. And then what my plan was to do was there was a pretty harsh like line in that front fender where it goes up to the pillar. And so I taped off right above that. Now that tape came a little bit loose, so some kind of sprayed above there. But I figured that would be fine for my purpose with that. And then I was going to go ahead and spray, when I did the hood and the sides of the fenders, I was going to go ahead and do the whole like side of the car and kind of feather it out towards the back of the car. This is what I ended up doing. And all in all, I think it turned out really well. Whenever I did it, it looked 100%. Now it's kind of like if you stand in a bright light in different positions, sometimes you can tell that front fender is just a hair of a different color, which I don't understand how, because like I say, I painted the whole side at once. So I kind of think that it ended up just being my head that I know that it's different, because whenever I have that thought and I just kind of take a couple of steps one way or the other, then I can't tell anymore. So I don't know, but it looks good enough for what it is. I'm happy with it. That's one thing that I love about these Raptor liner paint jobs. If I take one day where I can wash it, degrease it, tape it off, just go ahead and tape off the emblems or whatever. I've already gotten the door jamb, so I don't have to worry about all that stuff. Just tape it off, and then I can just respray the whole car in one day if I want to. So for me, I actually love it, and it's holding up great, and I couldn't ask for anything better.
Do not forget to hit that subscribe button.